Anyway, we were sitting there, and next thing we know, Tet hit, and we weren't expecting it. I was down in my bunk, and all of a sudden, here come the mortars again. So I just grabbed my helmet, threw it on, my 45, and took off running to get back up to the five-direction control. And I got about, 20 feet or 30 feet away, and more round went off right behind me. And it peppered me and blew me up against the wall.
Curious Humanography is proud to partner with Utah Honor Flight, part of the National Honor Flight Network, giving veterans the trip of a lifetime to Washington, D.C. to visit memorials built in their honor. Each flight is free for veterans and made possible by generous donors. To learn more or support their mission, visit utahhonorflight.org and find your local Honor Flight hub at www.honorflight.org. Also, if you'd like to see more stories like this, please support us by subscribing to our channel, liking, commenting on the video, and sharing it with your friends. Your support helps us continue to bring stories that deserve to be heard. Thank you for watching, and now back to our show.
Richard Lemmons, and my background is I grew up and went to, I don't know how much detail to get in.
No,
but
go ahead.
Well, when we were young, your brother and I, we used to go down, spend the summers on my grandparents' farm in Tocqueville. And so we kind of did the thing backwards. We would go down near St. George in the summertime.
Really hot down there.
And come up here, up to northern Utah in the wintertime. So, anyway, I went to school at Clearfield High, first graduating class. And I don't know what else to say.
How did you end up? You ended up in the Marines.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a personal thing. My dad died at 41. And I was a freshman in college at the University of Utah. I had gotten an honors and entrance scholarship, and I kind of stopped going and waiting, taking care of Dad. He had a blood clot hit his heart, and he died quick. And so I knew that Mom was going to have a hard time taking care of me and Roland. And she was working. So I dropped out of the University of Utah and joined the Marine Corps 1 July 1964.
Was anything going on in the world at that point, or?
No. There's small trouble spots. I think there were people in Vietnam, but not a lot.
Yeah.
And they were worried about the Dominican Republic, these medical students that were down there. And but nothing big. So.
And what made you choose Marines over another part of the military?
My dad was in the Navy, but he got attached to the Marine Corps in World War II. So, yeah, he went into Guadalcanal and New Britain and those places with the 1st Marine Division. And I said, I'll join the Marine Corps. And I'm sure that was smart, but it's what I did. And they sent me down to San Diego for boot camp.
What was that like?
Tough. But it was nice weather.
When you say tough, explain what happened there.
Well, everybody yelled at you all the time. Said, we're going to tear you down and then build you back up the way we like it. And I was okay. And they did. But I didn't get in any trouble, didn't get anything bad happen. And so then, but it was a 13-week boot camp.
Always the same drill master? Or?
We were supposed to be assigned, but we switched out with some guys in I think about 3 or 4 months weeks into our training. We switched out and got some new drill instructors. So, but I'm trying to remember their names and I can't.
Were they had they served in Korean War, or were they mostly?
Of them,
yeah, they had.
Mm-hmm. And so we went through boot camp And so we went through the tear down part, nothing you do is right. Do is wrong. Everything is wrong. They teach you how to salute and they give you a rifle and all this stuff. And that's when a lot of kids bailed on them, tried to sneak out and go home. But it wasn't that bad. But if you were homesick, it'd hurt.
Did you enjoy it, or?
And I didn't enjoy it, but it was worthwhile to me,
Yeah.
So they went through, and then about the time we got through about our fourth week out of the 13 weeks, they started teaching us things and taking us down, the path of you're now becoming a Marine. And so when we graduated, we were Marines. And I got stationed at Camp Pendleton, which is right up the coast from San Diego. And I got a bunch of people. If you're going to be infantry, you go through 4 weeks of infantry training. If you're not infantry, you go through 2 weeks of infantry training. So we went through 2 weeks. I went through 2 weeks of infantry training because I'd been selected to be a fire direction control guy. And
explain what that is.
Somebody's got to tell the guns which way to point and how much powder to put in. And that was us. We'd get the calls in from the 4 observers, which I think was those guys you met.
Yep.
They were 4 controllers. And we'd get them in either on the ground with the infantry or up in an airplane. And so we had our guns set out in July. Well, I went from boot camp to Camp Pendleton, 7th Marine Regiment, which was artillery. And then they said, I was scheduled to go up to Pickle Meadows in California for cold weather training. But they said, you're not going now. And I said, gee, that makes me feel good, And so I didn't go up to Pickle Meadows, but I did go up to 29 Palms, which is the big base in Southern California. That's where the artillery is. And we did a little bit of shooting, and then they said, okay, we're going to take you down and put you on a ship. So I went back to Pendleton, gathered up all my stuff, and they drove us down with all our equipment, the guns and the trucks and everything, and drove us down to Long Beach Harbor. And I saw the glorious USS George Clymer, which was a troop ship in World War II. That's when they built it. Had wooden decks. So it was not exactly a cruise ship. So anyway, we got on the Clymer and we went out, sailed out of Long Beach Harbor, debating whether we were going to go south or west. And we turned west. So we went into Pearl Harbor and had 2 days. We could get off the ship for a couple of days, and run around Honolulu.
How was that?
Pretty good, actually. But we had to be back at the ship at a certain time, and so we didn't stay out all night. But we went out and run around a little bit, and then we got back on the ship, and we went to Okinawa, where the Marines that were on Okinawa had gone into Vietnam, into Da Nang. And we went into their barracks. Camp Sukran was really an army base, but it was Marine artillery in Naha, the capital of Okinawa. And we went in there, didn't do anything, but just kind of sat around and waited. And then they said, okay, get back on the ship. We're going into a new base called Chulai, which I didn't know it was short for Krulak until years later.
At this point, had they told you, had Vietnam officially started, or they weren't giving you much information?
They weren't giving us much information, but I think everything was coming out that the Marines were there, and they had gone into Da Nang, and the Army was down in the southern part, and we were up in I Corps, the top place up there.
Okay.
And Chulai was about 25, 30 miles south of Da Nang. So we went in, and the funny thing was, I found this out later, is they had to buy the land from the Vietnamese guys that owned it.
And for that base, you mean?
Yeah, and run them off. So they did, and we went into there, and we had as an Air Force, Air Wing base, and they had F-4s. And so we went in there and set up our artillery and everything off one end of the camp, and then.
Well, how many guns did you put in there?
We put in our particular battery. We had 6,
and they were 105s.
105s.
Describe those for me. What are they called? And
cannons,
howitzer,
howitzers, yeah. And they had a crew of guys that would run the thing, and they would put a shell in, either high explosive or illumination, whatever it was, and then they would put powder bags in this brass container. There's 7 bags in it, and the more bags, the further it'll go, or the higher it'll go. So we would tell them, you're going to be, and they would have the thing all laid out where they could, which way was which. And we would call down and say, we want to go this azimuth, and we want to be charge 5 and elevation this much, and they'd go do it. And so that's what they would do. We would tell them where to shoot.
And you're doing that by hand or with a slide rule kind of thing?
Slide rule kind of a thing. I used to have one. I can't remember what happened to it. I took it with me. But nowadays, it's all done by the computer. And they just plug everything in, and the computer spits out what you're supposed to do. There, we would use a slide rule-like thing, and it would tell us if it's going to go this far, and then it's got to be this, and it could be any one of the 2 or 3 different, depending on how high you wanted to shoot.
Right. Like how many variables did you deal with on your calculation? How much powder?
How much powder and which direction?
And the elevation.
And the elevation, yeah.
And did you get pretty fast at doing that? I guess that was part of it.
Yeah. Get to where you could do it in the night. But it was interesting.
And how far apart were the 105 set apart? Were they close to each other?
No, they were deployed out with so many yards or meters apart, so that excuse me. So they had the gun, and it could go. They could move it around like this, and then they had the ammo behind it. And each gun had its own ammo bunker. And so they wanted to keep those out in case something hit it.
How many guys would work the gun normally?
Well, 5, I think, 5 or 6.
And they'd get off, 4 or 5 shots a minute if they wanted to? Or was it not that fast?
Well, it was not that fast, I don't think. But 105s was easier because you'd pick up the shell, one person, and then you'd ram it into the barrel, and then somebody else would close it, and it'd all be lined up with the amount of powder in it, and it'd pull a lanyard, and boom, and away it'd go.
And were you assigned a gun, or were you were doing 6. Calculation for all of them?
Yeah, we would tell them how many guns. Gun this, do it, or gun that, do it, or the battery, do it. How many are you going to shoot? What are you going to shoot out? And since it was up north, it was mostly very few North Vietnamese units that I knew about up there. It was all mostly guerrillas, that were so we didn't have really any big units or concentrations to shoot at. But we'd shoot at what they told us to.
And how many people were at Chu Lai? How many people were stationed there, would you guess? A lot? Thousands?
Stationed what?
At Chu Lai, where you were?
At Chu Lai?
Yeah.
Well, they had infantry, they had artillery, and they had air wing. All at Chu Lai.
Okay.
And they didn't have a permanent airfield. They just had one that they could throw out some big panels, and that's what the planes took off on. So we'd have to be careful where we were that we didn't shoot up when they were taken off.
Right.
So we had what they call a save-a-plane, which is we would call down to the airfield and say, okay, we're going to be shooting this direction, this high. And then they'd call back down and say, okay, don't shoot, we're taking off. And I don't remember what the exact words were, but.
What were the planes there? Were they the F-4s?
F-4s, and yeah.
Helicopters there as well?
They had some helicopters, yeah. We went around by helicopter, H-53s, the big Jolly Green Giant helicopter. And they would pick us up. We had one helicopter for each gun and all its equipment. And then we had one that was for the headquarters thing, or the FDC, Fire Direction Control, and the comm guys and all that stuff. So we would get on the helicopter and go someplace.
They would just haul the gun and you guys, and you went all as one team.
Mm-hmm.
How often did you do that?
Oh, they'd have different operations. We had first one I remember was Operation Starlite, where we went south from Chulai into Quang Ngai province, and they had reports of some North Vietnamese regulars down in there and that. So we went down there and set up our guns, and then we'd wait for the infantry to tell us what they needed, and we'd do it.
How long were you out there on that mission?
On that, Starlight lasted about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think. And then we went back to our old stomping grounds in July.
And in a given day, are you mostly bombing at night or in the day, or did it depend?
Well, we would have on call. If they saw something, they'd have us shoot at it. And if we didn't, then we had H&I fire, harass and interdiction, to keep and we just pop around out someplace, like on a trail where crossroads or something like that, So it's supposed to keep the guerrillas from using the trails,
yeah.
and the roads. So we'd go out and they'd give us something in FDC, and they'd say, okay, we want one round here at this time. So we'd call them down and to the guns, and they'd set it all up, and then they'd boom, fire it off, and then we'd go sit down for another 20 minutes and then do it again,
And how far, what's the distance you're normally shooting? What's the range on those?
I'm trying to remember now. It was all in yards. They do it in meters now, but it was in yards back then. And I can remember how big the H-105 would blow a 30-meter crater, or 30-yard crater when it landed, And then they had 155s that was 50-yard craters. So we would throw them out there. There's all kinds of pock marks all over Vietnam where artillery landed or bombs landed, something. So we would say, I'm trying to remember how, because that's what I had to get. They would tell us this, and I'd put that on the slide rule and say, okay, we got to go 5,000 yards out or 6,000 yards out, or
yeah.
So I can't remember them very much, but
you were seeing the explosions mostly?
I'm sorry?
You were seeing the explosions mostly, or were they far enough away?
No, they're far enough away.
You're not seeing them at all?
We wouldn't see them.
You hear them?
Yeah. And but Chulai was pretty safe. I mean, we had a bunch of infantry around us and a bunch of South Vietnamese.
So you never really felt like...
I never felt like I was going to get killed until I went back the second time.
So the first time, and is Chulai, is it jungle or is it more
coastal plain?
Okay.
So not a lot of jungle in there.
And you did R&R the first year you were there?
Yeah, they let me go down to Saigon for 4 days.
And
that's what I did.
What was Saigon like?
Crowded. And excuse me.
Was it just teeming with American soldiers at the time?
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of them there. And I went down and tried to find something to do. I don't drink, but I don't drink because I don't like the taste. So I'll drink beer, but
Yeah.
but hard liquor I didn't drink, which put me apart from everybody, I think.
Yeah.
So we'd go bar hopping and I'd drink beer and stuff, and then that's about it. But they sent a bunch of us in from up there, and that was really kind of a cheap, because the other R&R places was Hawaii, Bangkok, Hong Kong.
Philippines? Were they doing that then?
I think the Philippines had it. They could go in. You go into the Philippines. So I ended up in Saigon, which is, we're still in the combat zone. So thanks a lot. But it wasn't too bad. It got us out of the way. The routine.
And when you were on the camp, were you in a tent, or was it better? You slept in a tent.
Yeah, and artillery, everything would come in wooden boxes. So we would grab the empty boxes and fill them with dirt and stack them up to get a wall,
And how often were you guys getting hit with mortars, or was that common at all?
Very seldom that first year. I didn't get, I think they trying to remember getting the two tours mixed up. But we would worry about it when we were out on a mission, out to Starlite or something. I can't remember what the others were. And that's when we worried about getting rocketed or mortar rounds. Yeah.
How often did you go on the special missions that first year?
About once every 2 months, I think, or every 2 or 3 months, and they'd decide they had enough intelligence that they could fight somebody there,
Right.
So
was it usually only one gun that went out, or did you take more?
All six.
All six. Everybody went.
Everybody went every time.
Wow.
So because they wanted that kind of firepower, and then but when we were back in the base camp, and we would only use that H&I fire, one crew would get it all night.
Right.
And then a different crew would get it the next night and the next night and so on.
Did you have to do watch at night?
Once, I think, or twice.
Not much then.
No.
Was it kind of boring then?
Yeah, it was. Unless you were getting shot at, it was boring. And so, boring is good. And so...
how often would you get mail? What was that like?
Oh, mail come in, when we were back in the base camp, mail would come in about every 2 days or 3 days. I'll tell you a funny story about mail. I sent my grandma a letter, and in the letter I complained that I couldn't get any fresh milk because they didn't have it. All I had was this canned milk. So the next thing I know, about a month later, I get this package, and the guy says, "Lemmons," and I went, "Yeah," and this package is yours, and it stinks. She had frozen a quart of milk in the freezer, and when she looked at the postmark on my letters, they didn't stamp them until they hit the States. So she didn't know how long it was on the ocean or wherever. So she thought, it was only a day or two, so this will keep. So she sent it. All that milk leaked out and turned sour, and don't do that anymore, Grandma.
What was the word on the war at that point? Was there much information, or as a soldier, you just didn't get much?
Oh, we didn't get much, other than maybe a newspaper or two. Stars and Stripes would come out, but it was always, we're killing them, we're beating them up, and we're winning.
Did they ever say why you were over there? I mean, what the purpose was?
Well, yeah, we got lectures and things on, we are here to stop the spread of communism. Because if South Vietnam goes, then that'll take, all these other ones will fall.
Yeah.
And basically, as I got older and as I started reading up on it, Ho Chi Minh just wanted us out. He got the French out. Then he wanted us out, but they had split the country in two. The communists got the top half and democracy got the lower half. So.
Did you, were there villages nearby?
Yeah.
Your camp?
There was a small one, yeah.
Would you go to there very much or no?
No, because I didn't know which ones were friendly guys and which one were guerrillas and stuff like that. And then they didn't want us out wandering around.
Yeah.
Boy, I don't know why I coughed so bad. I usually can talk like crazy. But.
Tell me, let's go back before we go to the second thing. You told me the ship was miserable.
Yes.
Can you explain the ship thing from your perspective.
Well, the ship was old. It was built in World War II to carry troops back and forth to someplace. And they activated it again for Vietnam. And we went down there to Long Beach Harbor. And I think it had 2,000 guys on it. I'm not sure. But a couple of thousand people jumped on the ship. We all got a bunk. Some people got low ones. I got high one.
And how many's in a deck of bunks? How many is that?
I think there was 11 high where I was. But I was like number 7 up there. So you climb up the rack and get in.
How much space is between your face and the guy in top?
About 2.5 feet, because I had to put a sea bag on with me. All my stuff was with me.
On your bunk?
On my bunk. So, and the ship itself had, I remember one of the big day was to stand in line to get a Coke out of a cup out of a machine. You know, you'd stand there for a half hour, 45 minutes, and just stand in line, wait, get a cup, drink it, and then get out and either go back in line or go to your bunk and sit around.
How often were you allowed on deck? Did they rotate that? Because not everyone could be up on deck on that ship, could they?
No, they'd say, you guys get back in the bunks or down below, but. He was pretty open. We could come up on deck about any time we wanted, I think.
But it was just a lot of downtime.
Oh, a lot. Well, they would have lectures and things and let you clean your weapon, and stuff. So, in my second tour, I had a .45 pistol. It was my weapon that they issued me. And I had another guy that had one, and I don't know if you know about it, but when you take them apart, there's a big spring in there that
will fly out. Yeah.
Well, he opened his, and we were floating across the Marianas Trench, and his spring went ding over the side. It's probably still floating down.
Okay, so you finished up. What happened? What's the end of your first?
Into my first tours, after I came back from R&R, we sat around and did some things. And then they said, okay, you're rotating back to the States. And I said, okay. So I went down, got all my stuff and went to Da Nang and got on a 707 and flew back across the ocean. So that was a lot faster this time. Landed at El Toro and then went down to Camp Pendleton, which was my base.
Yeah.
And then they selected me. They said, okay, we want you guys that have experience. We want to send you to the U.S. Army Artillery School in Fort Sill, Oklahoma for 3 months. And we learn how to do what you've been doing. So we went to them and they said, keep all yours. Every time they issue you something, keep it and bring it back and then we'll use it. So we went to Fort Sill, Lawton, Oklahoma for 3 months.
What was that like?
Boring.
And, they didn't teach you anything new there? They didn't teach you anything new there?
No, we had done it already. They had better equipment, and it was getting the computers by then. So when we went out to when we went back to Pendleton, they said, okay, now we want you to teach stuff. We're going to have on-the-job training now. Instead of OJT, instead of on-the-job training, we're going to have classroom training for fire direction control. I said, sounds like a plan. And they said, you're teaching the first corps. Well, us guys, it was a staff sergeant. I was a corporal and 3 or 4 other corporals. And we taught the first class to the
new guys
coming in, which is a lot more than we got, but we had some experience and told them what it was like and everything. So then after I finished teaching them I went to Sill in October, November, January. I'm trying to remember now. I got it written down at home. September, October, November. And then in November, when it was time for Thanksgiving, we could come home.
Right.
So I got back to Pendleton, taught the first class in November, and they brought the first class, I guess in January, they brought the one class in and said, okay, these are your first class. So we taught them. And then they said, okay, now you guys go back to being the infant or the artillery guys. And we will, so I thought I might as well go back to Vietnam. So I said, if you need somebody over there, let me know, because I didn't have a bad experience over there.
Yeah.
So I went back. So they picked me up and they said, okay, you're going back. And I went back, got promoted to sergeant, and came in as the fire direction control chief. But I went to a F battery first, and then they said, no, we really need you over here we didn't say the headquarters battery. And I said, okay, stayed there for about a month, and then went to another one, Fox battery, for a while, and then went to Delta battery. And that's where I was. And then.
And where in the country is that? Is that a long ways from Chulai?
Yeah, it was on the other side of, Da Nang, north of Da Nang, in a little place called Phu Loc. And it was a French resort area. And when the French were there, it was it was on the beach and stuff that they could do. We didn't get there for anything, but
was that jungly then in that area, or
more jungle than Chulai was? But it was still kind of open plain stuff. But anyway, we were sitting there, and next thing we know, Tet hit, and we weren't expecting it. And so they started mortaring us like crazy, and we were only a few miles south of Hue. They really attacked Hue. But we were sitting there, and they started throwing mortar rounds into us, so we all scattered and went to bunkers, and the FDC went up, and we started shooting back. And we were out there with the artillery base, and I had, as a fire direction control, I had 6 105s, 2 155s towed, and then some 81 millimeter mortars. And we could call on all kinds of high explosive stuff to use. So we could go from close in to out there a ways.
And is it just all day, all night kind of thing when this started?
Yeah. It was, you'd get, they'd drop mortar rounds in, and then you wouldn't know what, and then it'd stop for a while, and then they'd bring some more in, and they'd drop mortars on us. And so I was down in my bunk doing something, getting something. And all of a sudden, here come the mortars again. So I just grabbed my helmet, threw it on, my 45, and took off running to get back up to the fire direction control. And I got about, I guess, 20 feet or 30 feet away from a mortar round went off right behind me. And it peppered me and blew me up against the wall.
It threw you.
Huh?
You felt yourself getting thrown.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot of it, but I banged off the wall, and a couple of guys come back out and drugged me in the FDC. And they were checking me over, and I said, I think he's dead. No, I ain't. I started to say, I know I'm not. I heard him say that. But I had a wound that went up the side of my head, and it split my scalp open. And a lot of blood comes out of your scalp. So I had this puddle of blood I was laying in. And they started checking me over, and they said, oh, you got holes in your arms, you got holes in your legs. And so I says, okay. And they said, but you're not in any danger of dying yet. So they put me on a stretcher, put in the back of a 2.5-ton truck, and along with 2 or 3 other wounded guys, and drove us down to where the medics were. And they put me out, and they said, okay, put him over here. So they put me in a slit trench, so I wouldn't get hit unless one fell right into the trench.
Right.
So I laid there for about an hour.
Is there explosions going on the whole time?
Yeah. It went off here and there, and then it stops for a while. Some guys got out of the slit trenches, but I sat there for a while, and pretty soon they come and got me. He says, "Your turn." So they picked me up, put me on a helicopter, and flew me into Da Nang on the helicopter. And I went into the Naval Hospital there at Da Nang, and they started checking me over. And they said I had 15 different holes in most of my arms and legs because I had a flak jacket on. My helmet went flying. I did go up the side of my head and hit my helmet and knocked it off. But the flak jacket protected me. I didn't get any of my torso. So I got wounded, and they said, "Okay, you're going to go. We're going to cut you out, and then we're going to send you someplace, and they'll sew you back up." I said, "Okay." So they cut all this out to what I thought was to take out the metal, but they didn't take the metal out. They just cleaned around it. And, the foot was in and there, they just left it, and then they cleaned where the wound went in. So they cleaned up all the wounds and then bandaged them and then put me on the hospital.
Had they given you morphine or something for the pain or no? You remember that?
Can't remember. I think they did. Probably did. They should have.
But you remember all this.
Yeah. So they put me on a plane, C-130, and we were supposed to fly to Manila, or Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. And halfway there, across the sea, they got a phone call. This is what they told us later. That you got a phone call that said, "We don't have enough room for them here, so you're going to have to take half of them down to Guam." Okay, so they put us in. So I'm sitting there waiting. I'm on a stretcher. Can't move. And evidently all the stretcher guys was sleeping or something. Anyway, the nurses came around and changed from Clark to Guam. And so, because all the guys that were sitting there said, "I ain't going to Guam." They'd hide the thing that they had, And so I ended up in Guam. We landed in Manila, or Clark Air Force Base, and all the guys was getting off. I says, "When we getting off?" And they said, "You're going on to Guam." I says, "Why?" And they said, "Don't have enough room for you here." So I said, "Okay." And so then they flew us down to Guam, and that's where I went into the hospital. And the next day, they called me in, and they took all those bandages off and sewed me up all the different places. And they used 15,000 stainless steel safety wire for stitches.
Wow.
So it holds your skin together. And
how many stitches did you end up with, Did they ever tell you a number?
No. I counted up once about what they were. I got 30 or 40 stitches. And so then I went back. So I was in the hospital at Guam, just recuperating, and it was a casualty room. And I was in a casualty ward, it turned out to be the sun porch for when the hospital was built. But they put beds out there, and so that's where I was. So
you're outside? Is that what you're
not
saying?
outside. It was inside.
Inside, yeah.
But it was called the sun porch, so you could go out there and sit in the sun. But
was it like in the movies where the beds are just lined up against the wall, and there's a hole on both sides of the wall? Or just one side?
Actually, one side.
And how many guys would have been in there?
In that area, I think there was probably, in where I was, probably 15 or 20.
Wow.
That were lined up there, waiting to either go back to Vietnam or go to casualty company or go to Okinawa.
Right. So
they told me I was going to go, when they stitched me all up, and they said, "You're almost done. We're going to send you to a casualty company in Okinawa at Kadena Air Force Base." No, it wasn't there. I can't remember which.
And so how long had you been in Guam then before they were going to do this?
All of February and halfway through March. And then they said, "Okay, now we're going to send you off to Okinawa." So I went to Okinawa, and they have to give people jobs. Well, sergeant, you can't make me wash dishes or nothing like that. They says, you're going to be the cashier, because all the officers have to buy their own food when they're in Okinawa. And so I would sit there and take money from the officers and let them in to eat. And I did that one meal a day for 2-3 weeks. That's all I had to do. And other than that, I'd just lay around. So I went to the guy that was filling out the tickets to go back to the States.
Yeah.
And I says, any chance you can keep me here until after the 1st of April or after the 1st of May? And they said, yeah. Why? And I says, because if I get back with less than 2 months to go, or less than 2 months to go, they'll just get me out of the service. But if I go back with more than 2 months, they'll assign me to a base someplace. I just don't want to go out to another base. And they said, okay. So next thing I know, I'm scheduled for a flight on the 13th of May back to El Toro. And so I went out El Toro, stayed there for 10 days and processed out of the Marine Corps and went back to my house.
Wow. So, when you went the second tour, how long in before you had that Tet Offensive when you got hurt? How long were you in?
I think I went over there in December. I can't remember off the top of my head. I got all this stuff. I went back to all my old orders and wrote all this stuff down, but I didn't bring it with me.
But you weren't there very long when that happened.
No, Tet was January. I remember I got wounded on 1 February of 1968. So I had gone back and I had a few months in country, but not very much.
Yeah.
And that's when I got wounded. So then I stayed in for a while. I might have made it a career, but I wouldn't have made it as a career as an enlisted man. I'd have gone back to college and got my degree. And I said, no, I don't want to get shot at anymore. So I got out and went back to the.
Did you, because that was kind of 67, 68 was when the protests and all the anti-Vietnam vet stuff. Did you catch some of that or no?
I caught some of it at San Diego Airport. As we went out of El Toro, they took us down to San Diego when we flew home on commercial flights. So we got off and we're all in uniform, So you got a lot of harassing guys yelling at you and stuff like that. But
what were they saying?
Baby killer. I can't remember.
In the airport?
It was in the airport.
Wow.
Or out, It was actually outside the airport.
Yeah.
We got off the bus. So.
Do you respond to that or you just
ignore it? What am I going to do? Jump on one of them. And I was still wounded. I was still bandaged up a bunch. And so.
What was the, what's internally the Marine? I feel like the Marines they seem like they're the more legitimate. Talk to me about that a little bit. What was the attitude when you were there?
The attitude was, if you're going to be a Marine, you got to be tough. Okay. And we're going to make you tough. I said, oh. So they said, we're going to be mean to you. But the one thing about Marine Corps boot camp is, if you go through Marine Corps boot camp and then you decide to go in the Navy or the Army or something, you don't have to go back to basic training. They just put you in. They say, what you've been through is enough. If you're in the Army and you want to go to the Marine Corps, you got to go through boot camp again. So if you go through Marine Corps boot camp, that's the only one you have to go through. And of course, they did change it up a little bit because they cut it from 13 weeks down to 8 because they were trying to get them through. And then they started drafting people into the Marine Corps, which really irritated old-time Marines because they never had draftees before. And they do now. And
so they felt like that was kind of undercutting the...
Yeah, if you don't want to be here, we don't want you. So if you didn't volunteer, that means you don't want to be here, so we don't want you anyway. And so they'd come in for 2 years. So I know that you could volunteer to the draft and go in for 2 years. And I remember some guys telling me that when they went in boot camp, the drill instructor says, okay, you guys that are here, if anybody wants to sign up for 3 years, we're here. You can do it. Because they was trying to get the 2-year draftees to go for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I remember the joke was that some guy went in and he says, I want to sign up for 3 years. And I says, good. What are you in for now? And he said, 2. He says, that don't work that way.
And their Marines are considered the first guys in. Is that their mission, or what kind of separates them out from everybody?
It's the Marine Corps, and a corps, the biggest a corps can be is 6 armies. So 1st Marine Division, 2nd Marine Division is on the East Coast, I think. 3rd Marine Division was in Okinawa, and you have 4th, 5th, and 6th that are reserve divisions. So the Marine Corps can't be any bigger than 6th Division. I think they've gotten bigger than that. That's one thing that I'm not going to talk politics. I promised my wife I wouldn't. But a lot of people they don't volunteer for the draft anymore. So they've pretty much got to grab somebody and make them go into service. But there's a lot that volunteer, so I guess the Marine Corps is still doing okay.
What was the most challenging thing for you in boot camp? Like the training wise, was it running? Was it what was the most difficult thing for you in boot camp?
Running down the beach in my combat boots was a pain in the butt because you're running through sand, and you got boots on. But the worst part about boot camp is, like I said, the first 3 weeks, because you cannot do anything. I don't care how hard you try, you cannot do anything right. They will find something and tear you down. They knock you down. I had been a runner in high school, half mile. And so when I started running, I used to raise my knees really high because I knew that would get me out of the sand. And pretty soon the sergeant come over and told me, he says, don't do that. Okay. And then I remember we were marching one time with our rifles, and we were marching along, and if you're not careful, they want those rifles to be all in a line. So you look here, and there's one rifle, and all the others are lined up perfectly behind it. So you're marching. So I was marching fine, but I would let my hand move over to the center, and then so I had this rifle that was, instead of being here, it was over here. Straighten up your rifle. Oh, okay. I got it back straight. The second time I let it go there, he picked up the rifle, lifted up the rifle barrel, and went bang, bang, bang on my helmet. He said, straighten that rifle up and don't let it happen again. Yes, sir. Yes, drill instructor. So I know that if you do something wrong, they're going to jump on you. And after a while, they kind of let up and say, we're trying to teach you how to be a Marine, and then that was okay. And so then we went through infantry training, because every Marine is a rifleman. That's the credo. You have to be able to use your rifle and be a rifleman. So I went for 2 weeks to a place called Camp Matthews that don't exist anymore, up north of San Diego. And the rifle range was up there. So, but they taught you how to shoot a weapon. I qualified expert with my rifle. And
at that point, what guns were they? What guns did the Marines have? What were you using?
In training, we had the old M1. But in M16, M14 was what we had in the field. And it looked like a F-16, or an
M16.
It looked like a M1.
Okay.
It looked like it, but it was slightly different. And then they went to that F-16.
M16.
M16. And that was a piece of crap, the first edition of it. But it sure threw out a lot of bullets, because infantry says it isn't so much the ability to hit a target as a volume of fire needs to be high. Because then it doesn't matter if you're aiming or not. If you put enough bullets out there, it's going to hit somebody. So it's not like Sergeant York or whatever he was that picked off all those guys in World War I. Because he was a good shot.
Did the M16? What made it? Why did you say it was a piece of crap? Because it jammed, or
it jammed a lot?
It jammed a lot.
Yeah.
And did the military come out and recognize that after?
Yeah, they finally come out with new versions and that were worked. At least that's what I understand, because I was out of service then. So
when you got sent to Vietnam, you had the M14?
M14.
And did you ever end up using that over there, or no? Was there times? No, you never used the gun over there?
No, I carried a lot, filled sandbags and stuff like that, but I never had to fire my gun in anger, I guess is what they said, M14. The pistol I was ready to use, but then I got wounded, and so I didn't need to use it.
Tell me, you got a Purple Heart, and how do they present that to you? Tell me about that.
Well, they were supposed to present it to me while I was in El Toro, because they got the Purple Heart, I got wounded, and so all those records were on me, and all of a sudden I got out of the service, and I hadn't got my Purple Heart yet. And okay, who cares? And so I got it on my order, on my DD-214, it says Purple Heart. But I never got the actual medal. So I thought, well, what the hell? About a few years ago, I went down to the recruiter? No. The base, the Marine Corps group that's in Fort Sill, not Fort Sill, but at Fort Douglas. And I says, hey, I never got my Purple Heart. It was never presented to me. He said, let me check on it. So and then he called me back. He says, yeah, it turns out you didn't get it. We have no record of you receiving it. So come on down and we'll present it down here. And they held the formation and everything and give me the Purple Heart. So I thought, that's pretty good. So now I got it, the actual medal. And
when you got blown up, could you tell the ordnance that was coming by the sound of it? You know what I mean? No?
No, I heard. The first thing I knew it was coming was the boom behind me. And it was already there.
Did you think the worst when that happened, or did you even think you were wounded? What did you think?
I says, I got blown up against the wall. I said, oh, God, I don't know what happened. And then I couldn't move my legs real good, and my arms hurt to move. But I was breathing okay. And my head hurt from where it didn't go into my skull. It just went grooved up over in fact, I think I still got it.
Like a flesh wound, like a scar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there. Anyway, so what do I know? Not much. I just remember him saying in there when I was on the floor of the FDC, is he dead or he's dead or something like that? And I was trying to say I'm not, but I couldn't get it out. Finally, I said, no, he's still bleeding. Help, so they'd work on me.
Was that at night or in the day when you got hit?
It was during the day, which I guess was good.
Now, am I wrong about this? Stephanie, your niece, right? Mm-hmm. Stephanie, your niece, okay. She talks about that your family didn't know what had happened to you for a while. Is that true?
Well,
what's that story?
The story is that they send a telegram, but Mom hadn't got the telegram yet. I was in the hospital in Guam, and I said, anybody want to call home? And I said, I better call and tell Mom I'm okay. So I called, and I had to pay for it, but they put me on a overseas line. And Mom says, where you at, R&R? And I said, no, I got wounded, but I'm okay. And She says, "Are you sure you're okay?" Yes, I'm in the hospital. I'm in Guam. Everything's fine. I'm going to come back home. But, I did get wounded. Okay. So that was how Mom found out that I got wounded. I'm sure she told Roland and Stephanie and all of them. Then, it wouldn't be Stephanie, she told Roland and her family that I'd been wounded. And then she got a telegram. She said, and she told me, she says, if I'd have got that telegram before you called, I would have been a basket case. Because I can quote that telegram for you. This is to inform you that your son, Sergeant Richard M. Lemmons, has sustained fragmentation wounds to both arms, both legs, and head. His prognosis is good. That was the whole telegram. She kept it. I've got it now. I said, that's cold. Can you tell somebody they've been wounded in both arms, both legs, and head, but the prognosis is good? Okay. So.
Wow.
That's how Mom found out.
Yeah.
I called her. And told her. I said, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. Didn't lose any vital organs or anything. So. Roland got hurt worse than I did. He was in the Special Forces Reserve outfit, and they jumped out of airplanes.
That story's crazy.
Yeah. They said, yeah.
He's so nonchalant about that story, too.
Yeah.
He just tells it like he got a flat tire or something and changed the tire on this. You know what I mean? My shoe didn't, we got tangled up together. We just held each other really tight.
Yeah.
Fell to the ground.
Yeah. He got hurt in his back pretty bad, And so I think he got out on that. But I remember him telling me a story. He says, there's this guy, he worked at the base too. He says he worked up the base and he had this guy that worked with him that was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And he found out that Roland was in Special Forces, and he turned to Roland and he said, I don't know why anybody would jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And Roland says, I work on airplanes. There's no such thing as a perfectly good airplane. They all got something wrong with them. So that was a pilot talking to him.
Having talked to a lot of vets, one sentiment that I think is kind of universal, I wonder if you feel the same way, is people saying, man, I wouldn't want to do it again, but I'm glad I did it.
I said that a lot. I've said that. Same thing. I don't want to do it again, but I'm glad I did it. So, because if I was going to do it, I might as well join the Marine Corps and get it all over with, So that was the fun part.
Tell me a little bit the PTSD. You didn't I think that was kind of pre anyone talking about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's good they talk about it now, but did that just manifest itself? Or looking back, I guess you see it now better.
Yeah. When I went to after they told me I had PTSD, I went to my doctor. Not the VA guy. I just went to my personal doctor that I go to. And I said, they tell me I've got PTSD. Have you got my wife keeps calling it a chill pill, just something that'll calm me down. And he said, oh yeah. So he gave me one. It was a little, I can't even remember what it was. Not
Paxil?
No,
Prozac. Yeah, could be Prozac.
And then he gave me another, and then I went back and he says, how you doing? And I said, I'm still getting a little nervous. So he increased the dosage. And then one other time I told him, I says, I feel like it's not working real well. And he says, okay, I'm going to increase the dosage one more time. And that's the max. I can't prescribe you any more than that.
Yeah.
And I says, okay. And that's what I take now is I take 2 pills of Prozac in capsules every morning.
And you notice a difference?
Oh, yeah. I ran out and they haven't refilled my prescription yet. So I can feel a difference now, but I know how to control it too. Never argue with your wife.
Sage words of wisdom right there.
Yes.
Any other stories? Anything else you want to talk about?
Let's see. What have I got? Well, let's see. But if you want to talk about the military, I joined the Army Reserve for a tour. I had a friend of mine that was in there, and I joined. And he said, "Okay, we'll make you a sergeant and come in." So I went in, and that was at one of the north part of Ogden, in the 2nd Street, I guess it was called in. Anyway, they had the reserve unit there, and they had an artillery unit. So I went in, and everything was going fine. And then we went on our 2-week tour. And we went out to Dugway. And them guns started going off. And I went nuts. I mean, I just was a nervous wreck every time those guns would go off. I don't know why. And so when my year was up, I got out. And I never went back in, so.
It was just, that was bringing it all back.
Bringing it all back, yeah. Because when the gun would go off, I didn't know if it was our guns or their guns or what was going on. So it was kind of I think if I sat down and talked with a therapist, I'd have probably been okay. But I didn't back then because PTSD really wasn't known for that.
Right. How long had you been home when you went and did that after you'd gotten out of the Marines? Had that been a while?
About 5 years. I think.
Oh. I can imagine that being pretty traumatic.
Yeah, it was. And I said, I don't want to be a sergeant anymore. So I'm going to get through my college,
How was, when you were in Vietnam on the bases, what was your take on the leadership, the guys you served under?
I had some good ones, and I had a couple that were weird, but most of the guys I served under were really good because they're all volunteers. Back then it was still all volunteers, and so they knew what they were getting in for, so they lived with it.
Yeah.
When you get a draftee in, he didn't choose the Marine Corps. He got told, "You're going to be in the Marine Corps now, whether you want to or not." And I know some guys that told me that they said, "Okay, you're going to go in the Marine Corps," and they said no, they went down and enlisted in the Army. And so I have a friend of mine that, remember when they had the numbers?
Yep.
When they first started doing that, he was in the Army as a lieutenant, and let's see if I can remember it right. He was a forward air controller, and he had a really hard landing one time, and it screwed up his back, and his back's been screwed up forever. And so he went down to the VA, and they gave him pills, but they gave him this hard stuff. And the next thing you know, he was hooked. So he'd start looking for it. And one day he said, "I'm going to go home for the weekend." So this idiot clerk gave him enough pills to last him for a week. And he went home and took them all.
Mm.
And he ended up dead. And so, he had it worse than I did, but it wasn't from being shot or anything.
It's pretty, man.
A freak accident, yeah.
Of most of the vets, even a lot of younger guys, right, that were in Iraq or in the first Iraq War, they've all had accidents, almost debilitating back injuries, just not even usually related to combat. It's just something happening here or there, and next thing you know, it's pretty significant pain, back pain.
Well, the problem they end up with is they have all those IEDs, improvised explosive or device, IED. And so they would take these old shells and things, and then they bury them in the road, wait for somebody to come by and blow it up.
Yeah.
And so we didn't ever have to worry about. We had mines that we had to worry about, mostly ours. But Brad, or my boy Doug, he would worry about getting one of those, but he never went. He was always in Kuwait, which is pretty safe.
Yeah.
I've been to Kuwait, by the way. I know it's safe. And so he went over there and was camped out in the desert. And but still, the knowledge that it can be anywhere. It could be anybody, and it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
That drives you crazy. But we had to worry about snipers.
Was that happening on your base once in a while?
Well, I heard about one where these kids had come up to the base wire, and the Marines would give him candy and stuff, and talk with him. And so one day they had a bunch of Marines at the wire giving candy to the kids, and one little kid walked up behind all of them, or got in the middle of all of them, pulled a pin on a grenade and dropped it at his feet. Kaboom! Him and all the Marines got shattered. I don't know how many were killed, but a grenade close can really get you. But somebody had brainwashed him into saying, you'll go to heaven, or you'll do this, or whatever it took to bribe him into doing it. They did it. And they had this kid die. And it's horrible. And you ever watch MASH?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The TV show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he talked about, I think Hawkeye was talking with this pilot, and he said, he got shot down or something. Anyway, he was in there, and he said his young kid that he knew had gone out into the minefield looking for scrap stuff, and he'd bring it back and sell it. Well, he went out and he picked up the wrong thing, and it blew him up. Didn't kill him, but it hurt him pretty bad. And so the pilot said, well, was it our stuff or theirs? He says, what difference does it make? And he says, to me, a lot of difference. I don't want it to be stuff I dropped. And he said, nobody knows.
Yeah.
Whether it was ours or theirs or what. So, it's pretty hairy to think of it that way, because the kids always get the worst. Do you remember that picture of the little naked Vietnamese girl running up the road?
Yeah. The last thing, what was the food like there on camp? How did they feed you? Did you get hot meals there?
Sometimes, especially for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And if we were back at a regular place where they had cooks and things like that, then we could get regular hot meals.
Was that food pretty good?
Yes, it's real good. But other than that, you end up with, in our case, C rations.
Describe that for me.
That's when it started World War II. Some of them were even still old. But they come in a cardboard box about that big, and it has a main course, a dessert, something else, and 4 cigarettes in a pouch, So if you couldn't go buy cigarettes anywhere, they put them in the C rations. And I remember when I got out and I was bow hunting, I would go buy C rations at Smith and Edwards and take it out with me, because the only thing I could eat really good on C rations, because I loved ham and lima beans. But everybody else hated them. They'd trade me.
How long are those good for? A C ration, how long does it keep?
Forever, I think. They put them in.
So your preference was the ham and lima bean?
Yeah, well, they had some other ones too.
What was your favorite dessert in the
fruitcake? It's one I remember the most.
And when you were out, when they put you on those missions, that's what you were eating? That's what
we would eat, yeah. That's what we would eat. C rations. They have K rations now,
which is what does that mean?
That means you heat them up.
Oh.
And the only thing we could do, well, being in the artillery was pretty good, because you have all these extra powder bags laying around, So you can dump the powder on the ground, light a match, and it burns really hot. And gets your food cooked or warmed up anyway. And there's always somebody that doesn't smoke. I smoked back then,
So you couldn't trade your cigarettes away?
No, I kept them. Except I didn't like menthol cigarettes.
That didn't seem like very many cigarettes. Well, I guess that's right. If you had three sets a day, I guess that's right. Mm-hmm. What's been the long term of your injuries? Has it affected you long term? And talk about that a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, after I got wounded, I came back and they did a physical exam, and they give me a temporary disability of 50%. When I got through with all my tests and everything, they said, okay, we're going to cut you down to 20%. I says, that's not fun, but I'll take it. And so then I was at 20% for a while. And then Nixon got reelected, or one of them. Anyway, he called everybody. He called me back in. They says, oh, no, they didn't call me back in. They just sent me an email and said, we're going to cut you from 20 down to 10%.
Is that the VA doing that? Who's doing that?
VA.
Okay.
So, and I said, nah, that don't sound right. So I says, I went down to the, not the VA, but the civilian guys that were there. And I says, I'd like to have have them take a look at this. And they said, well, they might cut you to zero, so I wouldn't do that. So I said, oh, okay. So I kept 10% for a while. And I was working for the government at the time, finally. And I went down to the, not the Veterans Administration, but anyway, civilian guys that are out there. And I says, I think I should get more. I'm not sure how much, but I was 50 and it felt good, and 20, which is okay, but 10 is not right. And so he said, okay, we're going to reevaluate you. Now, Nixon had resigned already, so they were kind of in a more forgiving mood. So I went and I talked to a nurse, I talked to a psychiatrist, I talked to a doctor for a while. And we talked about, we're talking now, and he would look at things and he'd look at my charts and all that stuff. And it turns out, according to the psychiatrist, that I have PTSD. And he says, so you've got PTSD, plus on top of your wounds and shrapnel wounds and all that other stuff. They sent me a letter and said, you've been evaluated and you're now 90% disabled. I said, that's a good deal. Well, I'm not going to fight that. So I don't know why I'm not 100, but they said you're 90% disabled. So, and then I said, PTSD will say why I was such an ornery kid to my wife all those years. I was arguing and we'd get into fights and stuff, but we didn't ever get divorced or break up or anything. Had 3 kids, but we were always doing this. I told her, I says, I owe you a lot, because she kept me out of a lot of depression. And so for the last, I don't know, close to 10 years, we've got along really, really good. Mostly because I say yes, dear, every time she needs something done. I owe you a lot, so much, And the kids have been really good too. So I'm still 90% disabled, which is a good chunk of money, and plus I retired from the Air Force.
So what did you do? You got home. What did you do for a career then?
I went down and applied go to Hill Air Force Base, and says, I'm a veteran and I want to work. And they said, okay, you get automatic 10 points extra,
Yeah.
Because I'm a wounded veteran. And they picked me up and turned me into while I was going to college, I went back to Weber State to finish my degree, which I graduated from Weber State with a degree in economics. And then I took that degree and went back to Hill, and says, I got my degree, and they says, okay, we'll put you on a training path from going to 7, 9, 11. And I said, okay. Well, I got 7, did 7 for a while, and then I got to 9. Then they came and said, we're canceling that program, so you can't have your 11. You have to compete for it. And I says, okay. Went back on the register as a GS9. Yeah, GS9. And I got picked up as a 7 trainee 11 logistics specialist. And so I was a 7. I went back to a 7 for about a month, and they said, no, you had all that time as a 7, so you're a 9 now. Well, I said, okay. Then I got my 11, and I was doing a lot of working for the Air Force and doing a lot of Air Force work, and then I went into foreign military sales. Well, actually, I got selected for a career broadening job at the Pentagon for 2 years. So I went there.
What does that mean, career broadening job?
Give me something else to do and make me broaden my career.
So you went to the Pentagon?
Yeah.
How was it, for 2 years?
Yeah.
What did you do there? Or would you have to kill us first if you told us?
Uh-huh.
No, I was just being a joker. What did you do at the Pentagon?
I worked in maintenance for the Air Force, maintenance directorate, and we set maintenance policy for the Air Force.
How was that? Was that fun?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. What's it like going into the Pentagon and working there?
Pain in the butt. I know like the only house I could afford was down in Fredericksburg, or just out of Fredericksburg. And so I got they have buses that you can get a seat on, buy a seat on a bus and get on it every day, and they'll drop you off at the Pentagon. So I went down there, and they said, I got on the bus, or got the bus, and they took us up to the Pentagon, and it was, I don't know, like an hour each way. Because it was what was it? The word I'm trying to think of. Anyway, it was, traffic was so bad.
Traffic's terrible back there.
And the guys driving, I couldn't drive one of those buses because they get in the carpool lane, which was good. Once you hit the carpool lane, everything was fine. Because in Virginia, the carpool lanes are in the middle of you got 2 lanes going this way and 2 lanes coming this way, or 4 lanes maybe, go this way and this way. And then you have 3 lanes in the middle that they switch them from.
Depending on which way the traffic's going. Morning or night, yeah.
Morning or not. So I worked in.
Was it really political in the Pentagon?
Yeah. I had to, I was supposed to work from 8 till 4, I think, 8 to 5. Anyway, I had a lady that was the boss there, and I says, the only bus I can find is one, and it doesn't get me here till right at 8 o'clock, and then I have to walk up and get to my desk. And then he says, well, she told me, she says, that'll be good until you can find something that'll get you here on time. I never even looked. I just kept coming in at that time. Pretty soon she left, and a different guy came in. I told him the same thing. He said, that's okay. Not a problem.
What years were you at the Pentagon? Was that pre 9/11?
Yeah. I went to the Pentagon in January of not 2000. Boy, I thought I'd never forget this. About 2000 and I stayed there for 2 years and then came back. My wife and family were with me. So that was kind of a good, kids got a good, they got a broad education because they were still in high school. Well, all but one of them was still in high school. My oldest son graduated, and then he came back with us. And so, but it was, I got promoted to a GS-13, and when I came back to the Hill, they let me keep it, which they usually don't do. So I kept it, and then I worked in foreign military sales for a long time.
Do tell that. What is that?
That's when people flying, other countries flying the F-16, We support them technologically. And you got 4 countries that put money in to develop the F-16, and that was Denmark,
Japan?
Norway.
No.
Denmark, Norway, Belgium, and one other one. Anyway, those 4, so they didn't have to pay anything, but because they had helped us build the airplane, so they would sit there and we'd give them the modifications and they'd put it in. And then some of the people we'd sell them to was the other countries, and I think Egypt had a bunch, Israel had a bunch. There was a bunch of countries that had F-16s. It was like 16. And for a while, I was the technical coordination group chief there, and as a 13. So it was my job to do the technical stuff. And then they had a whole bunch of people working civilian jobs supporting them. And then so I got tired. I said, I need to
Did you get travel doing that or no?
Oh, yeah. I went to Egypt
a bunch of times.
4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Israel a couple of times, and Japan a couple of times, and Korea more than that. Yeah, I went all around. Well, couldn't you ever get my wife to go with me? She says, I don't want to travel. She said, you're missing out. Well, so I would just go over there by myself and come right back. And but a lot of the people that went would try and take leave or so they could do some traveling while they were over there.
Right.
I went to England a couple of times, or Germany, I mean. But that's because the F-4 was still under our purview. And so when my career was civil service, and then I said, okay, I don't want to work after I'm 70. So 10 years, the year I turned 70, I retired. Got my full retirement, and then I went to work for some contractors. And my last job as a contractor was with I can't think. They bought out the one. I was a company called Karta, Karta. So some guy from India set it up, and he had government contracts here in San Antonio. And then he sold his company to another guy from India, NCI, I think it was. Yeah, NCI. So I stayed with NCI for about a year, and then I said, "Okay, I'm done. I'm going to get out and retire." And so I went down and filed for Social Security, and because I had enough time in then.
Yeah.
That's
full.
About 10 years.
It's 70,
Not quite, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but they cut it back because I was on a civil service pension.
I see.
And they cut you back a bunch. So I now get my retirement pay on the first of the month, my Social Security, my disability on the first of the month, because it's still 90% disabled. Then the third Wednesday of each month, I get my Social Security for me, and then my wife filed, but she never worked enough to get her own, so she just gets part of mine.
Well, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, so I get four government checks a month now, and not doing too bad. It's all indexed for inflation. So
yeah.
I feel sorry for these guys because I never did get furloughed by the government, but I know that they did that a bunch.
Yeah. Your takeaway after stepping back from Vietnam, coming home, looking back at it now,
Mm-hmm.
What's your takeaway from all that?
I think it was a stupid move to go in there anyway. And if the South Vietnamese couldn't take care of themselves, what made them think we could take care of them? I don't think we could. But the different premiers they had, wanted government to come in, and because they were doing good.
Yeah.
But the common people didn't do all that great. So I'm pretty sure I met a bunch of communists, but I don't remember. They weren't identifying themselves as communists, So do I think it was a mistake? It was a mistake to start Vietnam. Instead of just giving them the equipment that they need and the training that they need to use that equipment, and then leave them on their own. Because if they can't hold their own against the North, then they don't deserve to be independent. Because Vietnam has always been one country, French Indochina. But, so when we divided it, helped divide it, and then took over responsibility for the southern half, the northern said, start sending guys down there, So
the honor flight.
Okay,
tell me about that.
Well,
and tell me what that is.
Well, it's where they pick up a bunch of veterans and take them back and show them the sites in D.C., most of which I had seen when I was in D.C. But it was really interesting because they had people talking. They introduced us to some things that we hadn't seen before. And it's quick. You get on the plane, you go and you get off the plane, and then you go someplace. I saw the World War II Memorial, the Korean War Memorial, went to the headquarters of the Navy, saw the Marine Corps statue or memorial, and we went to all these different places. And then we ended up at, we were supposed to fly home out of Baltimore, but they had some problems, and so they put us on a flight out of Dulles. We flew out of Dulles home. But, we went over there on a Friday and came back on a Monday or something like that. I forget what it was.
It's fast.
It's fast.
Yeah, it's quick.
Turnaround. So.
Did you enjoy that?
Oh, yeah. That was great. I saw things I hadn't seen but when I was there. When I was there, I went to some things that they wouldn't send us to, like the Holocaust Museum I went to. They had just opened it when I was living back there. And I went to the Museum of Natural History more than once. And the Smithsonian, it was different. I did most of those.
Yeah.
But.
And how was that hanging out with the other vets on that trip?
Good. We had some World War II vets on that trip.
Wow. They must have been old.
Yeah, 80. Speaking of which, they were, and then they had some a lot of Vietnam veterans, and then a lot of Korean veterans, a lot of Vietnam veterans, a few World War II veterans. So we all went, and they said, whether you can walk or not, you're going to be pushed around in a wheelchair because we don't want to wait for somebody, and we don't want you to fall down. And I said, okay. So I brought a kid with me, my oldest boy, so he got to push me all around Washington in a wheelchair.
It's a lot of walking, for sure.
That's a lot of walking.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was, as far as that, the honor flight, it was really good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the heck out of it. And I paid for me, I was free. But my brother, my son, Brad, bought him a ticket to go with me. So he's seen it all now. He hasn't been in the service. And I got my second son, Doug, he went in the Air Force. And then his boy went in the Air Force. I used to ask him, do you like the Air Force better than being in the military? They all give me dirty looks because my son went over to Kuwait for a while. And he was in communications. And then his boy, Nick, went in, and he was working on avionics for the B-52.
Wow.
So he was in the States at I can't remember the name of the base, northern Louisiana. So, but they're both out now and enjoying a GI Bill. And
you've lived a storied life, my friend.
Yeah, I've lived it all. And when I was in high school, I was a National Merit Scholar. There's two of us in Clearville High, me and this other guy. So that's what got me my scholarship to University of Utah.
And that was the first year Clearfield as a high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that's cool.
Yeah, National Merit Scholarship thing. Took the test and passed it. And then when I went I've always been able to take tests really good. I went in civil service. They had the PACE test, professional and career exam. I took the PACE test and scored 100 on. And then they gave me 10 points for being a wounded vet. So I got 110 out of 100.
That's pretty good.
Anyway, glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing.